Thomas and the Colours. All the engines on Sodor enjoy pulling carriages. Taking passengers makes them feel proud and useful. The Fat Controller had an important announcement to make. "Today is the day of the big football match," he boomed. "The Sodor school team will play a team from the mainland." All the engines were very excited. "Whoever finishes their jobs first will pull the Sodor team." Last year, James had pulled the Sodor team. His carriages had been decorated with ribbons and flags. Everyone had cheered. This year, Thomas wanted to pull the Sodor team carriages. He was going to try hard to finish his jobs first. Soon Thomas's work was done. He was sure he'd finish first, and he steamed proudly to the yards. But when he puffed into the yards, there was James. James had finished all his jobs first. "Cinders and ashes!" cried Thomas. "Look, Thomas," huffed James proudly. "Don't these flags look wonderful on me?" Thomas was upset. "But you pulled the team carriages last year," he huffed. "And I'm pulling them again this year," snorted James, "because I finished all my jobs and I got to the yard first." Thomas was very unhappy. "It's not fair," he wished. He wanted to find a way to make James change his mind. James was on his way to collect the Sodor team, but he had to stop at a signal. Thomas puffed up next to him. "I've got an idea," tooted Thomas. "Why don't you take the Fat Controller to the match? He will have the trophy. That's the best job. Then I can take the Sodor team carriages for you." But James didn't want to take the Fat Controller or the trophy. He thought wearing the team colours was much more exciting. Thomas tried to think of another way to make James change his mind. James puffed along by the canal. Thomas raced up alongside. "Wait, James," he cried. "Look at your reflection. Green flags spoil your bright red paint," puffed Thomas. But James didn't think so. He thought he looked splendid, and he puffed off smiling. Thomas's idea to take the team hadn't worked. He had to think of another one. James was still puffing proudly to collect the Sodor team. Thomas was puffing along too. He was thinking hard. Suddenly, an idea flew into his funnel. Thomas pulled up to the signal box. He was pleased that James hadn't yet arrived. "Quick, sir, you must change the points." So the signalman pulled a big lever. Then Thomas watched James fly into the siding. The siding hadn't been used for a long time. It was very overgrown. Thomas heard scratching and scraping sounds. When Thomas saw what had happened, he could not believe his eyes. "Cinders and ashes!" cried Thomas. All the green and white flags had been ripped from James's funnel and cab. The soda team colours are ruined, cried James. Thomas felt terrible. I'll go for help, he said, and he steamed quickly away. Thomas felt very silly. He wanted to take the team and he had spoiled everything. Just then he saw Bertie. Bertie was taking the children to the football match. They were all carrying flags and wearing scarves. But Bertie had broken down. Smoke was coming from his radiator and his engine made a wheezing sound. Please, Thomas, said Bertie, can you take the children to the football match for me? I'm sorry, Bertie, puffed Thomas, but I have to help James. Thomas felt bad. He had already got James into trouble and now he couldn't help Bertie. Suddenly, Thomas had an idea. I can take your passengers, Bertie, and I can help James too. So Thomas quickly collected Annie and Clarabel and he took the children to the siding. They had a wonderful time. They decorated James with their scarves and flags. He looked splendid. When James arrived at the football ground, everybody cheered. They all thought he looked wonderful. I look even better than last year, puffed James proudly. Thomas was very pleased. Maybe I could pull the school team next year, Thomas asked hopefully. James thought that was a grand idea. But only if you get to the yard first, he teased.